Hey, welcome to The Why with James Hsu. Every episode, I sit down with a different guest to explore their why, what makes them do the thing that they do, what drives them, and how they think about the world. Today's episode is with Josephine McAdam. Josephine is an actor, performer, producer, and streamer. She recently produced and premiered a new film at Gen Con. If there's one overall theme to Josephine's creative output, it's that she's incredibly dynamic and intentional about her craft. Here, Josephine talks candidly about the mental aspect of being an actor-performer and shares some of her career aspirations. I had a great time chatting with her, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Josephine, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy day already, but it's a Friday, so, looking
How
forward to
has
the
your
weekend.
how has the week been for you? It's you've always got a lot of stuff going on, right? Just being on shows and
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
Yeah, I recorded a show this morning. One of the shows I'm on, Haunted City, pre-records, and one of our players is in London, so we usually record in the mornings to try and match up time schedule. And then, had some other shows, the Dungeon Run this week as well. And then I've been wrapping up final production on a short film that is due like this Tuesday. So it's been a lot of like just sort of finishing touches and a lot of emails this week.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
does it actually mean to pre-record? It just means the show's not live, or there's a
Yeah, yeah.
sort of like, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
basically we're not doing it live. So like Dungeon Run, I go to a studio, we do it live, straight to Twitch. But Haunted City, we jump on a Skype call. It's still like all done, there's no edits or anything like that, no cutting, but we are able to record it at say like 9 a.m. in the morning. So
what what is it like? Is it different for you as a performer or as a participant when you go into something that you know is going to be live streamed versus not, or does it not matter that
hmm.
much?
I think the live or pre-recorded doesn't matter too much. For me, what matters more is whether I can see an audience or not. Because
Mm,
if we're playing live, but it's still just at the table, we're not seeing a chat room or we don't have a live audience or something like that, then it's about the same. It feels the same. Um, the main difference, yeah, is just for me the audience being there or not, being visible to me or not, because sometimes I feed off of that and like that can make different reactions come up. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Like sometimes you're overthinking it because of the audience, but sometimes you can feed off of that energy in a really cool way. So I don't know, it's just different.
so it sounds like it's a generally a good thing to have the audience be there because you can feed off of them.
um hmm yes, sometimes like is it a I don't think it's good or bad, like I don't think it's like good or bad. It's just like sometimes that's fun. I think it takes a lot more energy out of you because you tend to give a lot more energy, but at the same time sometimes I veer off necessarily like a character just because I'm responding to the audience and like what they're liking instead and sort of just following that. Do you know what I mean? So it's not so much like I then I'm like not as focused on the story and character sometimes as I am on like, oh wow, they were really laughing at that. Let's just keep digging on that.
Yeah.
Um, but both are fun. Both are fun. I think one lends itself a bit more to comedy. So like I think I've done a serious show in a live capacity like at a convention before. Like we did LA by Night, which is like a pretty serious show normally, and then we did it at WonderCon, a live show, and it was so silly. So it just changes the tone a little bit, but it was still really fun.
When you're performing or in that place in real time, how much of it is Josephine versus the character? Because you mentioned, when you have an audience, you have to be aware that there's a Josephine part, which is I'm a performer.
Mhm.
How much of that is in, or is it kind of very fluid?
Um, let's see. I for me, I think it's different. Every performer is different on this, but for me, I really like to have hard lines between myself and the characters that I'll play, like for tabletop shows. Um, I think a lot of that is just to protect myself as a performer, because then no matter what happens, it doesn't bother me personally. Whereas some people can take things that happen in a game or in a scene, and like carry it with them even once it's done. Usually when a show's over, I can just sort of like, and I can look at it from the audience perspective, sort of like looking in and be like, oh, I can say like, oh, that's a shame what happened to that character, but I don't, attach it to my own feelings, which is good in the long term. Inevitably, like where I come in is more just sort of like on the meta gaming aspect of it, where if I see someone doing something, I, as Josephine, I'm like, oh, I should help them revisit that, or more just sort of like strategizing. That's where you become kind of almost like a writer or producer as well when you're playing in a tabletop show, because you're like, oh, they obviously want to talk more about that. Let me sort of like guide my character that way so that they can open up about it, or this or that. So the strategic side of things, I think sometimes I come in, but when it comes to character and story, I try to have that all be character based and separate from my own feelings.
Are there TTRPG folks that are pure method actors? Like they're just in character before, during, after? Does that even exist?
Well, that's so funny because a lot of people say that I'm method. But like
okay.
people really kind of misunderstand what that means in general. It just means like when you're
Probably
in character,
someone like
in...
me. Yeah.
When you're in character, you're like in character. Totally. Right? Like when I am playing someone, I'm not Josephine anymore. Like I don't sort of like affect my own feelings into it. I step into a character and I'm that character for that time frame. It doesn't mean some actors I think have like very famously like made it mean where like people go home and they're always in character. That's like not necessarily a part of method acting. You can definitely just stop and like go home and not take that with you. But yeah, once I'm on set, like once the cameras start rolling, when I'm in a scene, I'm in character, and like the people I play with, they know when I'm out of a scene, like still at a table, like I'll I'm back in myself and I'll still joke around, like I'll flit back and forth. But yeah, I try to stay in character just because I like think in character. I tend to like to prep for stuff, like some of the like method type stuff is that I will like write out my thoughts in character ahead of time, just sort of to get into that mindset. But it's pretty healthy, I think, to then step out of that to like really have hard lines of when you're in and out of character.
Okay. So those people who are just in character when they're dealing with the director or the crew, or when they go home, they've just gone rogue. That's just like some
Yeah. They're just
okay.
That's just them. They just decided to really stretch that out, and if some people, that's how they work, and that's gets really good performances out of them. I don't know. Everyone's willing to put up with different levels of stuff.
Yeah. So you mentioned, for example, you have a routine. So you're recording these shows on a weekly basis. Do you have a process for reflecting back on what you did, or how to take the character into the next week? Because it sounds like it is a job. It is a routine. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So each one is different, I suppose. And it depends how busy I get, like on any given week. But usually for my ongoing shows to prep, if I have a moment beforehand, sometimes it ends up being like, the 30 minutes before the show. But if I can, I like to do it like the night before, where I will write down sort of what I remember from the last episode, like just little bullet points. And in my notes, I usually write down every other person that I'm playing with, not the person, but their character, and how I feel about them at this point in the story, just to sort of help me like come back in and remember how I'm going to, dive into something. And if there were any goals that I had at the end of the last session. Usually I try to do that at the end of a game. Like say I have an idea, I know I'll forget it by the next week, so I try to write a quick note to myself for the next time, because that's the hardest part, is remembering week to week, especially when you're improvising, and keeping stories straight. I try to have my characters all be very different from each other for that purpose, because sometimes it's like trying to keep it all in your head straight can be a lot.
That's also something that's really interesting to me, is that when you're simultaneously in different productions, you have to, what's the term? Just switch gears or context switch. Whereas if you're
Yeah.
working on a traditional thing, you're probably just in one thing for a long period of
Yeah.
time.
Which is, honestly, like I'm an actor and, right now the writers are on strikes. Like auditions are basically just frozen with the writers' strike going on, and a lot is like pretty tumultuous. So I'm really thankful to be able to do tabletop stuff. Like I love it. I've always loved it. But I do really enjoy traditional script work because you just get to dive into a character and just live there and really explore stuff to a depth that I think like isn't always available on an ongoing show, and it's different formats and there's different things that you get to do. But I do like sticking with a character like that. But you find different ways to do it in tabletop as well. But every show, to sort of touch on what you're saying, like every show and every dynamic is different, so there is a lot of like switching gears. Like one of the shows I do is very family friendly, the other show I do is not. It's like, I mean, obviously but there's very heavy subject matter, lots of swearing, and so some of it is even technical switching gears of just being like, okay, remember not to go there and not to integrate these things and not to swear, and you know um it's just you get used to it, but it can be a lot. That's why I just always need lots and lots of notes to
Right,
remind myself.
right. So you have to excuse my ignorance, but I
Yeah.
grew up just with a more traditional kind of movie watching experience.
Hmm.
So, growing up, there was Cisco and Ebert, later Ebert and Roper. There's, people write reviews about things.
Hmm.
Is there a machine around that when it comes to TTRPGs? Do people critically watch things and then sort of write about like, oh, how was Josephine's performance? Like, how was it produced
um
and all that kind of critical analysis or
I think there are some like news outlets, like pop culture outlets that have written about the tabletop shows. Like a couple of the ones I've been on before. They don't really seem to go into like criticizing individual performances, at least not none that I've really seen. But like Polygon has written up about stuff, and various sites. But there's also like different um, academics that are studying TTRPG actual plays because it's all fairly new as a medium in general. So I think all of that is being explored. I've seen some like awards, like digital awards being put out there, but they're kind of like mixed into streaming in general. And
mm,
so yeah, it's just kind of finding its footing, I think, and there's not a lot of like structure in place for that, I think. So it's all just in its very like baby steps of where you find the like critiques
mm-hmm,
on performance specifically. And
mm-hmm,
and I think a lot of that is because you have, I think, two pretty clear groups of people doing actual plays, and one is actors coming in and playing, and the other is gamers coming in and doing these role playing games just because they grew up gaming. And so it's like two different approaches, and some of them they have different expectations of each person. I don't think I would have I don't put the same expectations when I join a game from someone who's a classically trained actor as I will from someone who has just been gaming their whole life and doesn't have the traditional like um, acting training. So I'm not going to ask or expect them to have those things. So I don't know. I think it would be hard to find like a system to start critiquing within. I
mm-hmm.
don't know.
So, but there must be just Discord communities or fan communities where, of course, they're
Yeah.
just analyzing everything and yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the fans get super into it. I love seeing it. There's Reddits, Discords, everything. All these theories. There's fan fiction. There's like everything. It's just like any other sort of media that people are excited about the characters and what's going to happen to them.
Right. And along with that, maybe some of the weird, bad stuff that happens with the internet. I don't know. Is there as a performer, I'm sure there's been things written about you that are probably factually untrue or just
Oh,
kind of
sure.
out
Yeah.
there.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. But I guess I just sort of brushed that off because it nothing too wild has happened, and everyone gets really emboldened when they're on the internet and don't have to say something face to face to someone. And um you know I think the positive really really outweighs any of the negative that comes through. So I try to just hold on to that, and I've gotten better at it. I've had times where I'm like much worse, really, really sort of zone in on any negative comments or anything like that, because they seem to like stick out so much more. But then you're getting all of this really great feedback too, and I just now I do a better job at just focusing on the good and realizing you can't really do anything about people that have a very like negative outlook. Usually those people are coming from like this is just how they feel, and it's usually not coming from anything you did but just something going on in their lives, that you can't really affect. So I think I've gotten a little better about about dealing with that. But
How do you get better at dealing with that? Because that's still something I'm trying to work
yeah.
through. So, any advice?
Yeah, like I said, for me it's focusing on the good commentary and realizing I don't the negative, it really is, it's like a minority of everyone out there, and those people, like I said, usually when they're making a comment, it doesn't actually have to do with you. It just has to do with what's going on in their lives, and however, angry or bad or whatever, something that has slighted them, and they need somewhere to take it out. And oftentimes someone they don't know personally, were behind the protection of a keyboard, online anonymity is just the easiest way to do that. um I really think that that's where so many of those comments come from. And in the very small instances where someone makes a negative comment that maybe it does have grounds, like maybe you accidentally said something that you didn't mean to. I think, people make mistakes, and it's got to be okay to just be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way, and to move forward, because like we're constantly changing and evolving and growing, and like it has to be okay to make mistakes, try to be better, and like move forward. So I don't know. They didn't really give much advice, but I think it's just focusing on the positive and knowing that it's not you, it's usually them when it's
Right,
when it's bad. Yeah.
right. Focusing on the positives. And I guess it's just experience, right? Being in the game, so to speak, for a little bit longer, it just gives you a little bit more ability
Yeah.
to deal with.
That and encouraging each other. I think the more you do it, and the people and the performers that you're around, even if they don't admit it, or other creators, it doesn't matter, like in this field where you're online in any capacity, everyone tends to have those same insecurities, and everyone is aware of those comments. And so when you can just like lift each other up and encourage each other, because like that's what keeps me going now, is that like I work with incredibly wonderful people, and they are constantly feeding me, like they're like, oh, this was great, really enjoyed this or whatever else. And like that, does so much that it doesn't matter if there's a bad comment here or there. Like they believe in me, and like your fellow creatives, being on the same level as you, if you can give that back out to them, I don't know, I think it just is what keeps us going.
How's your support network? Who are the people? You don't have to go into specific names, but can you
Sure.
describe what it's like and how they you help each other or maybe help keep you grounded in some way?
Yeah. I remember when I moved to LA, that was like one of the biggest things I always wanted to be aware. I was like, it's like I can't get cynical and jaded, and like I gotta try and stay grounded, because I've seen so many of my friends like come and go from LA, come back, everything, like everyone's got these different experiences, because the entertainment industry is extremely difficult. Like it's not unfounded to become that way, but I just always knew, like, I still want to be myself when I come out of this. I don't want, someone else's negative experiences or whatever else to change who I am fundamentally, which, is easier said than done. But um, in order to do that, though, I think it's been extremely helpful to have people around me that aren't necessarily directly in the industry, right? They're just on the outside and they are just there for me to be able to talk about things that are happening, talk about how hard it is, without I think the difference of them not being in it is that sometimes it's hard to complain about these things to someone who's experiencing the exact same thing. Like on one hand, yes, you can commiserate, but on the other hand, they're just like, yeah, I know it sucks. Like they just sort of are at the same level when you're complaining because they are also going through it. And so like they can't really bear that weight. But when someone's outside of it, it's like, they can encourage you and just, I don't know. For me, my parents, my husband, like my best friend is not in the industry at all either. A lot of my close friends are pretty removed from it. So they just get to check in and see like, what wild stuff is happening this week, in my world, and just are really kind and open and real people. I think for me, it's just nice to be able to unplug from being forward facing, from being on camera, from being sort of perceived by all angles. And so it's nice to have friends where I know we don't necessarily have to be photographing this for Instagram, or, I don't have to make sure I wore makeup to this. I can, all of those little things. Like for me, if I can just step out of pressure for a little bit, which is pressure I've signed up for, like this is just kind of part of the job, but it's nice to be able to have those breaks. And for a long time, that's what gaming always was for me. Of course, now I'm doing it on Twitch, but gaming has always been the escape from acting, to just be able to unplug and, lose myself in a game and sort of make believe and whatever else. So I do still, now that I do that on Twitch, I try to make sure that I balance also being able to do it off camera as well, because I still want it to always have that like fun escape for me. You know what I mean? So I guess to answer, like, support system, it's my loved ones, my dog, who's like crawling behind me right now.
Oh, okay.
My dog, my family, my friends, but also games off stream are like a big support for me. Like that's how I unplug too. Even like puzzle games on my iPad, like that's how I sort of turn my brain off for a little bit. So I think it's just having these little things.
What are some of the games that you're playing now that you're really into?
That I unplug with? I mean, they're really like so well, there's so many actually. I love board games. So I play a lot of board games. One of my favorites is like Mansions of Madness, which is funny because it's not like chill and relaxing, but
yeah, the theme is definitely not that, but it's a cool game.
But it's a fun game. Of course, playing Magic with friends, like I really love that. I love being able to play like multiple games. Like I know Commander is like all the rage. Everyone's playing Commander and I have no qualms with Commander, but I do love just like taking out a 60 card deck and having a really quick game and then just getting another 60 card deck and another, and just being able to switch between and just have fun with it. It's so easy to like chat and hang out and play Magic. It's always I don't know, that's the part I've always loved about it. And what else? And otherwise, it's like real boring. Like on my iPad, I'll literally just do like jigsaw puzzles because that I can truly be mindless for.
That's good. I used to play a lot of Bejeweled and a lot of these more what was that? Candy Crush. It was Candy Crush, huge for a while, and I remember just living on that game for a long time. There's nothing wrong with those kind of games just to kind of decompress, I think.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be like a AAA Zelda kind of deal,
100%. And they talk about like, I guess the different sides of your brain and what you're doing. When I haven't had to for a bit now with auditions frozen, but when I'm memorizing lines, I love doing those kinds of games, like either a puzzle or, the Candy Crush-esque games, just because like something about it like really helps me memorize and like lock it in, just because I'm like doing something else at the same time. I don't know why it works. I think there's some science behind it, but it does.
What was the moment that you decided to become a performer or an actor?
Actually, I don't think there was a moment. I think I just like came into existence being a little like weirdo who wanted to perform in front of people, because like ever since I was a kid, I've just like always been, I mean, I think it's normal for kids to like dress up and sort of like start putting things on, but I was always performing and always wanting to yeah, put on shows. And even like when I was like 3 years old in class, like we would be putting on shows. I was like doing tap shows, and then we would move. I moved a lot growing up, and I would like learn some new culture of performance somewhere. And just I think no matter where I was, everywhere has a form of performance and entertainment where people gather together and enjoy that together. And I think I'm just realizing this like in this moment, that it's like one of the only consistent things no matter where I moved. And I think that consistency has always been a comfort to me. People always come together to like enjoy entertainment together and share in those feelings. And it helps us empathize with other people and understand new ways of thinking, or see it from someone else's perspective. And I've just always been drawn to that, I think, because I moved when I was so young and just sort of had to start over again. And it's a lot easier to do that like through performance and to connect with people that way.
So you were just never the shy kid. You were just never the person that was afraid to be in front of others and do something.
Um, I was never the shy kid, for sure. I was always like up and loud in people's business, every school I went to, whatever, making friends. Um, I would never just stick to like one circle of friends. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm part of the theater nerds, but also I'm with the band nerds, even though I'm not in band, and also I'm with the jocks, even though I'm not in any of the sports, and also I'm, like I would always just float between them just because I wanted to meet everyone. However, I do get like terrible stage fright. Um, I get nervous so easily. And I think people are always surprised to hear that. But even on the shows that I do in the tabletop shows, like I get so, so nervous. Um, I, yeah, I have like pretty bad anxiety, but I think it's just because I care so much about it. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of people do get nervous when they perform, but that's just because they really care about what they're doing. Um, and I don't have any advice on how to make that better, because I wish I knew how to just make that go away. I just like to do it anyway. It's nerve-wracking and scary, but it's worth uh, the joy of like being able to entertain others.
But take me through why that happens for you specifically. Is it just this
Mm,
feeling that something results wise is not going to line up with what you played out in your head, or is it something
hmm.
else?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, ultimately, it's just like the fear of messing up. I don't know why. I think I get self-conscious, and I think that there's better months, better days. We all have good and bad days as far as like our outlook on ourselves. I think it's just holding myself back. And I think a lot of nerves for people, it's only ourselves holding us back, right? Of just getting in my head of like not being enough, not having enough vocabulary for this, not being, being poetic enough when describing this, or not having um the right reaction right at that very moment. I think it's just fear really of just could have done something better. And I think that's why ultimately I love scripts. I love collaborating with other people. I like to take someone else's words and, make a whole person. And I love working with a whole set of people in film and TV. Um, at tabletop, you get to collaborate with the people there at the table, but there's a lot more weight on your words because you're improvising. And I think improvising is really impressive and really hard. And I love having a script because I just don't have as much confidence in myself as a writer as I do as a performer. If you give me your words, I'll perform the hell out of them. But if you're asking me to also write it too, that's where I just have a lot more nervousness.
How do you get better as an improv person? It's just I'm just asking
Yeah.
these questions expecting you to have a 30-second answer, and I'm
Like,
sorry if I come
here's
across
how
that
we
way.
do it.
Yeah, ABC. Here's the 30-second YouTube video how to do it. But seriously, I really am curious, just because given what you told me, where you're coming from is having that maybe anxiety or stage fright. You seem like someone who would probably prefer to be more in control then, if I'm not mistaken. And improv sort of makes it harder to be at that
100%.
point
Yeah.
at all times.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely like me out of my comfort zone. But uh, I guess practice, just like everything, practice does make it easier, and it's so much easier when I'm doing it every week. Like it comes much easier at that point. And um I perform a lot better if I'm taking care of myself that week. Like I said, if I'm not letting anxiety, general mental health sort of not be great or something. When I take better care of myself and I really like don't let myself beat up on myself, I go into a show much more confident, much more, with a lot of ease. And it's just, I think it's a lot easier when you're with a group where you can rely on them. If you can't think of something, they'll pick up the slack. Like a good group will do that for you. So it doesn't really matter if you didn't have an idea in that moment, someone else will, that it's not all on you. And it being a team effort. And that does help take off some of the pressure. When you're in an environment, sometimes you don't have control over that. Sometimes it's a one shot and you don't know the other people at all at the table, and you didn't have any chance to like talk at all. Like sometimes you're just like dropped right in the middle. It's not common, but sometimes you're dropped right in the middle of a situation. And that can be difficult, but I like to remind myself that actually this is what's helped me, is that like I've had so many like bad days where I've been performing on camera where no one could tell. And like after the fact, I've even watched them back and been like, oh, that actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Or for some reason, like it was so much worse in my own head. And half the time it's like, no, you actually know what you're doing. You've been trained in this. And even on your worst days, it's still good. It's still like passes fine. It's still going to be entertaining because you care enough about this. And for me, it's like I fall back on training that I didn't realize I have. So even on a bad day, it's really not so bad. And so I need to just accept that and remind myself of that. And that helps a lot for sure.
Wow. That is actually reminding me a little bit of, first of all, I'm not a, in case you couldn't tell by now, I'm not a performer actor. I didn't know even what was a pre-recording, what that term was. It's probably an industry term that I should know. And the only time I actually played a role was like maybe like in fifth grade, like I played the king in some sort of fantasy production. But I can equate this a little bit to what I am familiar with, which is public speaking, because I used to be a lot more, I'll just say, nervous or anxious about public speaking. And there was a workshop that I had at a workplace where they recorded us doing just a practice speech or talk.
Yeah.
And I remember being nervous at the time, but then when you play it back and look at yourself, I was very nervous, but you kind of realize that it's very hard to even see yourself being nervous. It's a lot of it is all in your head. So it gives you confidence. And in addition to just, as you said, just doing it more, knowing that I've been here. And it was also the same, I think, when I started podcasting, just listening to my own voice. But then after, you just get used to it because now it's the 100th or 200th or whatever show. So you're editing, it no longer feels foreign. So I think, I guess Yeah. So
No,
I
it
can
is.
kind
It's
of
the
understand where
same.
you're coming from. Yeah.
It's truly the same, honestly. It's just about like whatever you're pursuing, like whatever's important to you and what you're pursuing and putting yourself out there for, there's always going to be some nerves connected to it, and we're always going to inflate it internally. It's like when you're nervous doing anything and you hear your own heartbeat, right? It sounds like it's like in your head and you're like, "Oh God, everyone must be able to hear it." But it's like no one hears your heartbeat. Like you're good. It's all just it's amplified to you, but that stuff like even if some of it makes it out, it's like everyone makes a mistake. That's the thing. I keep going back to like it's got to be okay to make mistakes and move forward. Like that's just human nature, and just sort of accepting that we are not always going to be perfect, and sometimes like that's the best part of people and what makes them charismatic and charming and great to be around is that they're not perfect and they feel human and you feel like you can connect with them.
Right. Humans have warts, and it's
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah,
package, right? Which makes us human.
exactly.
But when you're having said that, when you're in that when you're doing the performance, are you just so locked in that you like are the nerves happening before it and after, or how does it how do you are you
um
just locked in most of the time, or are you also processing it? I guess it goes back to maybe the question about like are you in character or not, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. The nerves happen beforehand, like when we're like about to start. Once I am and in the moments where I'm not in a scene, like for a tabletop specifically, actual plays, because those work differently. The moments where I'm not in a scene, as soon as I'm in character and speaking, I don't feel it anymore. Like it's fine. But when I'm waiting, it's sort of trying to figure out like, oh, is this the right time? Like I don't want to interrupt something, sort of just like the deliberation part of it. That's where the nerves can sometimes set in. Or yeah. Afterwards, usually I just sort of I used to hold on to it a lot and sort of like overanalyze things. But I've gotten better about just letting go afterwards. I'm like, it's done. It's not like we're gonna cut and edit and shoot anything else. It's like it's done. It's okay. There's nothing I can do about it.
yeah, there's not quite a time machine for that
Yeah,
yet. And
yeah.
Josephine, I also wanted to ask you, what is it like to go back and watch your work, whether it's
Oh,
a TV show or a movie or even like a weekly live show? Do you still do that fairly often? What's your process for looking at your own performance and maybe taking something
um,
from it?
I don't really like to watch myself. I'll watch like Twitch shows, not necessarily to watch myself, but just to see like how the audience reacted. Um, I mean, I won't watch a whole show. Like maybe I'll watch like snippets of it and I kind of watch more for like technical things. That's when you really start breaking down performance stuff because there's things that I do, and even if they were honest to the character or whatever else, it might not read on camera, or even just technically, it's like, oh, I was like turned too far this way, so you didn't even see this. I'll look for little things like that so that I'm aware in a space of what's happening, but um, I don't usually like hearing my own voice and things like that.
Oh, so it is still something that you want to avoid.
I mean, it's fine. I will watch, and I've been to like film screenings and stuff, but it's kind of like, I'm like watching like, oh God. Like I'm usually so nervous the first time something screens. Yeah, I get very nervous the first time it screens. If I've already seen it before and I know what to expect, then whatever. But with live shows, I kind of like enter this fugue state where like I half remember the stuff that I did anyway. So if I watch it, like with LA by Night, we used to always do like watch parties afterwards when it would air, and I would be like so scared because I couldn't remember what I did. I had no idea if it was a good idea or not. Like
Because you were just in the moment while you're doing it. So,
yeah, and I'm just like, oh God, and like the thing that the thing with improv that is so hard. Like I love having a script because the script has been workshopped. All of the bad ideas have like been gone through, and like we've rehearsed it, whatever else, and it's like so many minds went into making it. It's really workshopped. Improv is just like the first thing that came to your head, like yeah, there's like so many more there's I try not to overanalyze, but I do always think like, man, I wish I had done this instead, or that would have been a cooler idea. But I don't know. Some people are really good at those first witty ideas, and I'm always applauding the people I get to work with. I have some really talented people that are just like immediately ready with like the wittiest, smartest response, whereas I need a little time to like stew on stuff.
Yeah. This is a little bit tangential, but I always found it really interesting how when I watch something that's really well produced, the lines have been scripted, rewritten a million times, especially now as I know a little bit more about how things are made. And it's sometimes funny because a movie is so well crafted. You're just like, people don't actually talk that way ever. People don't actually talk in these perfect
Yeah.
cadences where there's exactly this witty thing retort to this thing to that thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm guessing with, I mean, not guessing, but with improv, it is more real. It is more, I don't know what's the term, organic. And I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's a question here, but it's really fascinating to see that divide in things. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit. I'd say that it depends on the genre of film that you're watching, on how realistic, like some things you're watching are like very stylized, and yeah, they're not like real life at all, and others are written to try and emulate it a little bit more and have the awkwardness and even the cadence of
Mhm.
dialogue. But with improv, I think it's the same thing. I think it just depends on how the improviser's brain works. I think, yeah, when I'm doing improv for sure, it sounds a lot more natural because I'm like, trying to like think of stuff. But it's like I get to work with like the incredible Ross Bryant, and he's in like improvised Shakespeare group,
Oh
and
my
they
gosh, there's
improvise
such a thing?
Shakespeare. Yeah, they're incredible. They started in Chicago and they're out here in LA, and they're so good. And so seeing stuff like that to me is always like mind blowing. I couldn't do that. Like, and it astounds me. And that is just, it's incredible. It's all in Shakespearean verse. Like, and they just improvise it. So
In
like,
character
yeah,
Shakespearean
yeah, yeah, yeah,
verse.
yeah. They'd put on a whole
Wow.
play. Um, it's
Wow.
really, really great. But yeah, so I don't know. Yes, some of it can be more natural, some can be not. I don't think it's script or improv related, but rather um just the style of what's being done.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd say like LA by Night was not, even though we were improvising everything, that was not like natural feeling because it's like this vampire show and we're being very dramatic and we're choosing our words very distinctly.
I've watched a little bit of it,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. It's very dramatic. So I think it just, depends on the style and genre of what you're making.
Speaking of that, is there a Josephine McAdam style?
Oh gosh.
This
I
is where
don't think
Josephine
so.
describes herself in the third person, like any good
Oh,
actor or actress.
yeah, right. I hate that. Uh no, I don't think so. It's making me laugh because for some reason what popped into my head was one of my acting teachers in university. This is like the worst thing. It was like an acting class. He had us all in there, and he was like, everyone now has to label themselves. Like, we're gonna go through and we're gonna label everyone by like your type and like who you are, like what you come off as immediately, and like that'll be your type. And like it was like really harsh, and like he was like very honest with people, and it was so wild. And I remember when he came to me, I still to this day have no idea what he meant, but he told me I was a dangerous Dresden doll. And I have no idea what that means.
Dresden Doll, as in the band? Like
I don't
Amanda
know,
Stevens,
man.
or
Someone will
what?
have to describe what that means to me. If you know what that means,
This sounds
I've
like a lot
spent
of projection on his
yeah,
his end.
yeah. I was like, I don't know what that is. Anyway, um, all that to say is I don't know what my style is. I think my style is It's so hard. I guess I think it's different because in tabletop is in improv, I feel like my style is dark, brooding characters that just want to find love. I do have romance in almost every single one of my tabletop like games that I
Okay.
play in. I don't know
Okay.
why. I just think it makes the stakes so much higher.
Hmm.
But then when it comes to acting stuff, I mean the stuff that I love doing is like genre stuff like sci-fi and fantasy. That's what I am a big nerd about, and I would love to just, I would be happy playing like an alien or an elf like every day. I'd be fine. Like put me on a TV show and I'll just be an elf every day and I would be like set.
Yeah.
Um yeah.
I'm
That
curious of the actors or the circle. Sorry, I think you have something else you want to finish
Oh,
on
no,
your
no,
answer.
no. I don't even know what I'm saying. Go on.
No, I was just gonna say of the circle of actors that you're exposed to, and is there some sort of general ethos like actors want to be chameleons, they want to fit exactly what the role is, or are there certain actors that are just like I am XYZ, or I do have a type. I don't know how that works. It's
Yeah.
also weird because there's
Everyone's
also a
different.
perception of how the industry sees you, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yes.
people get typecast as certain things
Totally.
as yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Typecasting very much is a thing. So, um, yeah, man, this is gonna get a little depressing probably. But just typecasting is 100% a thing in Hollywood to the point where um beyond just your performance or the way that you look, but also the stuff that you do now outside of acting, because people are so plugged into every facet of your life. So a lot of actors get have trouble getting roles or getting seen as an actor if they are also doing hosting jobs, for example, or if they're also doing um yeah, certain like types of content on YouTube or anything else where they're perceived like they're performing in some way, but it's not acting related. All of a sudden, like you're just seen as that. So people will very quickly put you in those boxes, even though I think it's completely ridiculous. We're all able to do multiple things and turn on different facets. But the same thing happens like even within acting, is that like, people have a hard time thinking of comedy actors being able to do drama, even though I think comedy is so, so hard. If you can do comedy, I bet you could do drama for sure. But people just get set in those ways because they're so used to seeing someone one way that it's really hard to bend their mind another way. TV actors get that way too. If they were like on a long-standing show for so long, everyone just knows them as that one character and they have a really hard time seeing them as something else. And it's not just the audience, but casting directors will do that too, and they're like, oh, I just see them as so and so. So I think film actors get more leeway because it's just that one role. But if they just keep doing the same types of roles, they kind of just get stuck in those types, because it's just like any business where like, at the end of the day, people are talking about money and how they're going to get that back. And business people are at the top of that. And they're saying, like, well, I've seen you do this and I know that worked. I don't want to take a risk with you on something else. And so they just keep you in the same thing because they know it worked the first time. So it's, yeah, I think most people try to find their type and sort of play into that. Other people, which is what's known as like character actors, are the people that can kind of be a chameleon and be sort of transform and not really be known for just one type of role. But I find that seems to be a bit of a minority as far as like character actors. I feel like there's only a few people that we know of where like, oh, they can play anything. Most other people, we kind of see them playing into the same kinds of roles. Um, and I don't know where I sit yet.
Yeah, and character acting to me it feels like a redundant term. Like
Yeah,
you're
I
always
know.
acting a character. This is not directed at you. I'm just saying
Hmm.
that in
Yeah, it's
theory
a weird
anyone
term.
should be able to play any character. It's just whether or not you want them
Yeah.
to, or if you're a studio head, or
Yeah.
whether or not they do it well or not. But technically it is possible for anyone to play anybody. So it's really more
Yeah.
maybe about the results or
Well,
the willingness
yeah,
or the
there's like different,
opportunity.
I think also like different styles of acting will lend to different. So there's, yeah, there's a lot of different techniques of acting, and everyone uses like different things and sort of that creates different performances as well. There are some actors I'm sure that you'll find where you see them doing interviews and you feel like they are very similar to the characters that they're portraying. Because some people will cast you that way, where they'll cast you in a role that's like basically feels like a you're memorizing different lines and doing different scenarios. It's still acting because you're in scenarios that you haven't experienced, but they want your persona like connected to it almost. It's like they want that like a lot of I feel like George Clooney, sort of like you have these sort of like they're bringing their charisma and they're bringing their own personal charm to it versus like someone who's just like you are this character now and it's different from who you are when we do an interview with you.
Mm.
um I think that there's different those are like two pretty distinct types of actors that do that. And it's an odd, I kind of feel like, and I don't know if it's just like I've been noticing it, but a lot of newer shows I feel like have just been casting people that they want as opposed to sort of looking for the acting like doing like a 180 acting
Mm.
where like you don't see them necessarily in there. I don't know. I have like this theory that like I may be completely wrong, but I have this theory that like having so much like influencers and personalities that we follow now on social media has made it easier to just do that, like to just want someone's personality versus like
Mm.
the skill set to transform into someone else.
Right.
And so I don't know, because there's like, what is it like? I didn't watch it, but I've seen like so many people comment on it, like the HBO show, like Euphoria. Like people were talking about how like they just like went and found like the people when they were on the red carpet. There's like a couple of the actors who are just like exactly themselves, like completely like out of it, doing these interviews, and you're like,
Hmm.
oh, you just are the character. Okay, got it.
Hmm.
Um,
That makes it easier maybe to inhabit that character if it's adjacent or
yeah.
similar, which is good
Yeah,
too.
it's
Yeah.
cool. It's cool for people that are like confident in doing that. For someone like me, who I'm like, I don't want to be like I don't want to play myself. I want to be another character. Like I said, I need that hard line between character and me. And so like that makes me like so much more uncomfortable. I'm like, oh God, don't cast me in anything. Like, uh,
it's it's also fascinating because to me it's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing. So because I also feel like it's also possible that performers create a brand for themselves that does
mhm.
become the characters that they're known for,
Yeah,
almost like they lean into that. So there's also a
yeah.
kind of like did the Euphoria actor were they like that before, or did they just become like that maybe over time,
No, I think
or
they found them like that.
oh they just found
Like
them,
the one
okay,
I'm
they're
thinking
just
of.
ready to
I
go.
can't remember what his name is, but like I think they discovered him. Like he wasn't an actor beforehand
Yeah,
or anything. Like
good direction. Just be yourself. Just
yeah.
here's some lines. Just be yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always so interesting. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, maybe they lean afterwards, yeah, the marketing, the PR of it all, I'm sure they like lean into a persona a little
Hmm.
bit.
Hmm.
For actors because it's like, oh yeah, let me just ride this wave and just get cast in a bunch of stuff like this for a bit.
Hmm.
I'm sure. I don't know. It's wild. It's like there is no one right way to do it. Like there's no
Hmm.
one right way of like acting or anything in most creative pathways. There's no like one way. There's no like, oh yeah, you do this and then you get promoted to this and then you have a clear way. There is none of that. You're just like it's a bit of a free for all. You just have to find the way that you can stay sane while pursuing your creative passions, and the way that you do it, however, like helps keep you healthy along the way, is the right way.
That's so fascinating. So, were you ever tempted to follow a prescribed way? Because, anything that we do in life, whether it's to be a writer, an actor, a podcaster, or a YouTuber, or anything,
Hmm.
there's always people who will just tell you, do it like A, B, C, D, E, and this is the best way. Or maybe I shouldn't say that's the only way, but these are some of the best practices. I'm curious if you
Yeah.
ever gone down that road where you feel like, oh, or maybe someone told you like, Josephine, you need to do this,
Oh,
and this, and then you'll break in, and this will happen for you. And
oh, all
how
the
do you
time.
filter that all the time, like just yesterday?
It's like, Hollywood is full of people telling you like this is how you should do things. And it was really easy to break out of that when so many, like I got to meet like many really successful people, and they all said something completely different. And I
Mm.
was just like, oh, it's,
There's definitely got to be more than one. There's
you
not
know,
like
like,
the
yeah.
one way.
I was like, it
Yeah.
was so quick because it's like, oh, you're all doing fine, but you all like completely negate each other. Like, you're like completely conflicting advice. And so I'm like, okay, I just have to find the way that works for me because obviously there is not just this one way to do things. And what worked for you, like, totally didn't work for this other person. So it's just what you're willing to do. And also, like, your own ethics and morals and what you're willing to do because like there's a lot that I'm not willing to just like let go of my ethics just to get ahead in
Sorry,
something. You know what I
I'm
mean?
laughing because I'm just imagining the worst of Hollywood or the business. I don't know. Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
have
I
to go
mean
into
anything
that.
you can think of is probably that. So, yeah, I again just try to stay to who I am through it all, and if that makes my path a little bit longer, then so be it.
Hmm. Maybe a better way for me to ask the question is, did you have any struggles with trying to figure out that path, or were you tempted at certain points to maybe go,
To
like, was
try
there some
something,
trial and
yeah.
error? Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's constant trial and error. I mean, yeah, every day I am doing trial and error, which is like, I'll get um like this year it's like I have agents here, I have agents in Texas just in case. I put myself on local hire in Texas because I have friends that I can stay with, which means that if I got hired for something out there, I would pay to fly myself out, right? Like I would cover those costs and everything. And like some people are like, put yourself local hire anywhere, you just make it work if it means you get a job or whatever else. And I'm like, okay, but I gotta like be able to survive and like pay for stuff. Um,
So if
you
something
know,
happens in Brazil tomorrow, you're right there. Yeah.
right. It's like and just being able to balance that and there's different again, it's what people are willing to do. I'm part of the Screen Actors Guild, so I can't do non-Screen Actors Guild films, right? Like they have to be union films, and then other people they'll be part of it and they're like, just do everything and wait, like until you get caught. And I'm like, that's like everyone has different different levels of things that they're willing to do. And in the past, you always weigh like, oh man, should I be doing that? Like maybe I should be doing that. Maybe I should be just trying to do anything and everything. But then you see other people and that ends up hurting them. So like if
Yeah.
you have any like if I have any gut qualms about it, like usually I find that that's for a reason, if my gut is telling me like I don't know, like yes, this might get me ahead right now, but I don't think in the long term it'll serve me. That's usually the case. A lot of like short term gratification things are really just that, and they don't pay out in the end, and it's not worth burning any bridges because like this any creative endeavor, if you're gonna stay at it for a while, it's gonna be a long road, and the people that you meet and that you befriend and that you make a good impression on, like it may be like 10 years later that comes back in a positive way. And so it's better to keep those positive than really just sort of I think if you go into a viewpoint that is only self-serving and that isn't about sort of as creatives, I think that we're like constantly feeding one another like in entertainment or in content or whatever else, like we are in service to others really, and if we're only doing this in service to ourselves, I think it's a very like short trajectory for how far that like ends up going. um yeah.
How do you select? How do you know if a project? Oh, let's call it a project. I don't know what's the right term, but how do you know if a project is worth going into? I assume you must have turned down certain opportunities. So like, how do you know? What's your
Sometimes,
radar?
yeah, I'm not really in a position to turn down too much, but I will turn down stuff um, if the subject matter is really something like the message is not something that I agree with. Like if it's something like I just can't be a part of, I will turn that down. I'll do, um, hmm. Yeah, I don't know. This is why I have managers now. Like I have managers and they help me deliberate that because it is a lot of pressure on your own to try and tell like what's worth your time or not. And so my managers are the ones that are like on the level and they're looking at that and telling me like if this is gonna serve me in some way or if I just want to do this for fun, then that's fine too, but just they're very straightforward with me as to whether something is going to be of benefit or not. Most of the time, it's like for me, if people involved, like it's not like a size thing. Like I love doing indie films or whatever. If people are passionate about what they're doing, that's what I really care about. I want to be on a set with like people that are really enjoying what they're doing and having a good time. You don't always get to control that, but that's what I hope for. Um, yeah. I don't know. And hopefully I get to like do more genre stuff because that's what I really love is like I said the sci-fi fantasy horror as well. But I do lean more into sci-fi and fantasy even though I've done more horror. Um uh Hopefully that's what I'll end up sort of like finding myself in and I'd like to do more period stuff too. I'm gonna eventually be moving to London and so I'm looking forward to like the kinds of projects that I can do out there because there's a lot of period pieces and lots of genre work too.
Oh, really? Okay, that's huge from LA to
Mm-hmm.
London at some point. Like what's the is that the motivation to be more exposed to those types of projects or it's a combination?
Oh gosh, it's like a huge combination of stuff. All of my family are in Europe except for my parents, and when my dad retires, they're gonna go back to Europe. So like in a few years' time, all of my family will be in Europe. Um, so part of it is to be closer to them. We've got, our niece and nephew who are like growing up. One is uh about to be 2 and the other one is just turned 5, and I feel like we are missing so much of seeing them. And so I'd like to be closer. And then I think it's the work-life balance that is also appealing. Going to London, I can still be in the industry like in LA, but there seems to be like a lot of a healthier sort of you're acting, you're in the industry, but you're also like living your life and doing other things. Like there isn't the same expectation that like if we call you up for an audition that's today or tomorrow that you'll drop everything and show up. From what my friends and contacts out there have conveyed, it seems to be a lot more of like, oh, you have at least like a week's notice.
Mm,
Like,
hmm.
people are nice to you when you come in. Oh, we'll go see each other's plays and
Maybe
like, I don't
something
know.
more European in the culture and
Yeah, yeah,
everything doesn't have to be right now. Like answer this
y-
email right now and be
yeah,
there
yeah.
tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just like, and doing so I do feel that like in LA, like almost everyone is in the industry here, like in some capacity, whether it's acting or just like on the crew side of things, like they know someone who is, and so everyone is inevitably plugged in, and I feel like they just some people seem to have a hard time of getting out of it and just doing like the rest of your life, like living your life and doing other things and not being consumed by it. And so I think like that's what I'd like. I like to just go and like live my life and then also get to do acting, but not have my entire life be consumed by work. Um, yeah, it's hard as a creative because we love what we do. Like I love doing it, but I think it is good for us to not let it totally consume our lives.
I hear that. I hear
Yeah.
that. Um, I wanna pivot a little bit because you
Yeah,
did
yeah,
mention
yeah.
this from the beginning. Like, tell me about the film that you're or the production that you're
Oh,
working
yeah.
on. Yeah.
I was born out of like the pandemic, not working on stuff and just wanting to make something. I moved to LA from Austin, and there was this very like independent spirit of like just coming together and making something, not for anything in particular, just to be creative and make something together and collaborate. And I've been trying to do that in LA for a long time. And it is a lot harder because everyone is so busy in their own stuff. It's really hard to drive around, whatever. It's been really hard to find that. And finally, like, I found someone, my friend Ross, who I was mentioning earlier, like helped me write this. He's an actual writer, and I was like, I don't know anything about writing, but I want to make something, and would you help me write it? And he did. I'm in Haunted City with him as well, and so we've gotten to know each other pretty well. And so we wrote that, and I got friends involved, and we just like, I don't know, I think because of the pandemic, it was like the perfect time as well, like after lockdowns, because everyone was kind of itching to create something. And so it was a lot easier for me to find people like, hey, I already made this, we already wrote the script. Would you want to do this? And just calling in favors, and everyone just came together to make it. It was really, really fun. And finally, we are at the like end stages for editing. The thing is, when you're calling in favors, it's like kind of on everyone's free time. So we are finally on the last week of, we're getting the coloring done on the footage and the audio mixing. And those are like the last two things. And hopefully everything will be done by like Sunday night. And I'm turning it in, I think Monday night or whenever I can. And it's going to be premiering at Gen Con, which is super fun, especially because so many of us involved are all gamers as well. It centers around a group of gamers as well. Like it's a group of gamers and something wild that happens to them. And so Gen Con is like the perfect venue for it. So I'm really excited that it's going to be playing there.
That's amazing. So this was a multi-year project in the making.
It was probably like a year ago now that we wrote it. Yeah. We filmed it in January though. So it's not like too bad. Just took like, 5 months, 5-6 months of like, oh, editing. Oh, here's some scoring. Oh, here's the, like it's just like each part like at a time. But filming it, we did it in 2 days. So
you produced it. Are you also starring in it? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, I'm in it. I wrote it. I'm in it. I helped produce it myself, Becca Scott, Ife Nwadwe, Ross Bryant, I'm trying to think, Liz Adams, and Shannon Rogers were all acting in it. Jonah Ray directed it. And so it's really fun. It's very fun and silly. It's, it should be a good time. All we want to do is just something fun. It's not like, a deep, dramatic like dive into anything. It's comedy horror.
Comedy horror. Okay. And an all-star cast too. That's pretty interesting.
And we got super lucky. I'm very grateful for the group we got together for sure.
Yeah. What was it like to get it to premiere at Gen Con? Like, is it just your connections, or what is the process like?
Well, no, they have we've been going to Gen Con. We all know Gen Con for gaming stuff, but I didn't realize they have a film festival. And so when I realized that, one of the other producers was like, hey, I got an email. Gen Con has a film festival. Should we submit to it? And we're like, oh, yes. It's like the only place I could think of that really makes sense to air it. So we just submitted it, and they were super, super nice because we didn't have a final cut. We submitted like a rough cut to them, and they liked it and they accepted it. And so now we're just trying to get our final version into them.
Right. The coloring and other things, the finishing touches.
No, yeah, it was just submitting the same as everyone else. I think we had to like pay for the extended deadline or something, but yeah, no, we got lucky. I'm excited though, because I didn't realize there was a film festival component. So it'll be cool to kind of meet other filmmakers. And what I was wondering about is whether, like we're all gamers and we made this film, but I'm wondering how many people are just filmmakers that were just submitting to a film fest and have no idea what Gen Con is. Like, I wonder. Oh, you don't know what Gen Con is?
No, I'm saying that could
Oh,
be
the
that
other
there
one.
are people are doing that. I definitely know
Yeah.
what it is.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I thought you said like me. I was like, really?
No, I said that could be
Oh
it
yes,
could be
yeah.
that there's people that are pure
Yeah.
filmmakers. Yeah.
Which I think will be interesting. I look forward to like seeing the other filmmakers there and what they think of like the 75,000 people that'll probably be around for the con.
What is it like to have these different hats, like a performer versus a producer versus someone who's, I guess maybe the stereotypical way is being in front of the camera versus behind it, right? Like, how do you
Yeah.
see that for yourself?
Um, Being behind the camera is really easy for me. 'Cause I guess like all of the pressure that I feel is when I'm like on camera in front of people performing. Um, when I'm very like type A and like organization, and I have like a million Excel sheets. So like the producing side of things is it comes a lot easier to me. Yeah. For me, like that side behind the camera side, pretty easy. When I was in school for acting, while I was studying acting, I was actually doing makeup on sets so that I could learn like how they ran behind the scenes. So like I worked in crew capacity like very easily. So um that's very comfy for me, you know. People don't I think the thing that like with on camera is that like there's just a different level of critique that people have of every single thing that you do. So that's where the pressure comes from. But um yeah, I guess I just really love it because I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it because it is a lot of pressure. But yeah, I like producing. I'd prefer to produce something that I'm not also in because I think I get conscious of like asking people to do things when I'm in it. It feels a little more awkward to me, but this is my first time doing that, so um yeah, maybe I'll produce some other stuff. But mainly producing kind of taps into what I like doing anyway, which is just helping each other make stuff, is like collaborating on stuff. So I'm always
Hmm.
happy to like help someone make something, and then inevitably if that is producing, then sure it's producing. But you know.
Having said all that, what is it like to uh, work with you when you're a producer? You said type A. Like, are you very demanding? Like, what is it like? What are the vibes
I
working with Josephine?
no, I try not to be. I mean, I will just like, I try to be very like open about what's happening at any point. I just try to be clear with my words because I think like the biggest thing people get caught up in is like miscommunication. So if I can call someone, if because that's like much easier to get tone and stuff across versus like an email or a text, I will. But mainly it's just I try to be like very nice, especially on a project that's like no one's getting paid for it, right? Like it's a lot of like, hi, I'm just checking in. It's a lot of like
Yeah,
very but if I'm paying someone, however, then I'm pretty like cut and dry, I guess. I
yeah.
still try to be nice,
Dynamics.
still try to be polite and nice, but it's like, hey, so we need this by this date. Just check, like just need to know where you're at. That way we can update things. Like I still
Yeah.
don't try. I never try to like chew anyone out or be mean to someone. Like I always try to be polite.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's still good not to be an ass, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
still things that need to get done.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
yeah. Yeah. So how do you see in the future for you? Like, are there more? Is there more of Josephine the producer in the cards? Is it because you like how? Is there
Um,
something else on the horizon, or is it kind of like a one shot?
I don't know. I live my life like not knowing what's next. I I never know what like next week will bring. It's just kind of the industry that I'm in. Like I literally, I could audition for something that changes my life in a month, and that's just kind of how it is. As far as what I plan, I I don't necessarily have the time right now to like produce more stuff because there's been a lot of tabletop shows, which is great, And so I'm just kind of writing this for right now. When I finish editing, when we finish and we turn in this short, I'm going to finish editing the stunt scene that I filmed forever ago. We haven't edited it because the short kind of took precedence. We filmed it first. So I'll finish doing that, and then I'd like to get back to writing the feature that I was doing, but everything kind of had to go on hold because it's just been a little nonstop, just logistically in my life, and things are starting to slow down a little bit. So I think before I start like just immediately chewing, like jumping onto something else to take up all my time again, I want to like have a little bit of breathing room and think about like what I want to do next. I have like multiple people that I'm talking to about more short films, but that's just about like being in them. Inevitably, like films, especially shorts, because it's very collaborative when you're doing short films, I tend to help produce them just because, again, logistically, I'm kind of type A. And so, like, a lot of people don't like doing that stuff, and it's easy for me to organize. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, I have people credit me as a producer. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
come act in this and I'll help you out with some logistics. But there are a few people I'm talking to about more short films, so I hope I can just keep making some stuff. And especially if I am going to be moving, I'm hoping in like a year-ish or so, year and a half. I just want to make stuff with people while I'm here and collaborate with folks while I can. And that's been a good like motivating factor. That was like a big motivation behind just starting to get things rolling this year too. But it's really hard to just be busy all the time. It's hard to be busy all the time and like not really getting paid. And
Definitely.
it
Yeah.
but it's really fun.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Josephine, it was so nice having a chance to talk to you today about your creative process and
It's
just
been so
everything that's been
lovely.
going on. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I just want to ask you, there is a last question, which is there anything that you want to plug in addition to the movie? Like, where can people find your stuff on the internet?
Um yeah, you can find me at JCVIM. Oh my God, on all the various platforms that have since come out.
Did
Like
you
there's
just join Threads as well?
I'm on Threads. I'm
Okay, so
on
you're on
Blue
the
Sky. I'm
gazillion. All
on
right, JCVIM.
Look, it's all JCVIM at least. If more come out, I don't know, maybe I'll be there too. I'm hoping that it can just
I'm
end.
sure there'll be three more that come out next
Oh
week
my
or whatever
God.
it is. Yeah.
So you can keep up there. The short film is going to be premiering at Gen Con, but then it'll also be coming out on Good Time Society's YouTube channel. And then I'll have, be having some of that good magic content too, because I'm an MTG ambassador as well. So,
Oh wow! Congrats.
and thanks.
Are
Yeah,
they've sent you some stuff already? And
I've gotten some swag. I haven't gotten my first product bundle yet, but I'm very excited. It's on its way. I can't
very
wait
nice.
to open a whole bunch of. I've been like holding off from buying stuff right now because I know I'm getting like
You'll
products
just be
in, so
getting
I'm
some
like
stuff.
I'm
Yeah.
like waiting
Yeah.
eagerly. Yeah. So yeah, online on stuff, various channels. The easiest way is just yeah, checking social media because I'm not gonna list it all off in one go.
Yeah.
But
You're still streaming, right? Once a week.
yeah, I also stream. I stream
You've
on
got
my
too
own
much things
channel.
going on.
I stream on my own channel like 5 days a week.
Oh, yeah, I have seen a little bit of that in the past. Is it still piano? Is that still
I
the,
do
or it's
piano on
gaming?
Wednesday mornings, and then the rest of the days it's gaming, which right now is Final Fantasy 16. And well, we just finished Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I'm gonna start Ghost of Tsushima, so should be a good time. It's real
Mm,
chill. It's a very relaxed stream.
I have felt that when I watched bits and pieces of it. And okay, I lied. That wasn't the last question. The last question is actually, um, you're a pianist. Like, how did that part of your life begin, and how do you? What's your current? This sounds such a lofty question. What is your? It's like when I ask people, "What's your current relationship with magic?" What's your current relationship with the piano?
I love playing piano. I've been playing since I was 5 years old. Um, and I just love it. It's, when I talked about like the support systems, games or whatever, piano is another one of those, and martial arts is another one of those for me. Like, so I've been doing both for so long that it's just like it serves as another escape. Like, it's always safe to me. Like, I can always just sit down, play some piano, and it's just like, I don't know, a happy space. It's like there's so much emotion in music. It's pretty. It's really satisfying getting to play. So it's just like a really, really like comfy place for me. And the same thing when I go do martial arts. It's just like it's like being home for a little bit, no matter like where I am or how much madness is going on. So I love it. It's a great relationship, me and the piano.
Does that also mean that you have some sort of musical inputs into your productions, or are they different?
Not really. I can't like I sight read music. Like I'd say like that's like my, most impressive skill for piano, and like I can play difficult things, but I'm not like a composer, or at least I haven't really delved into that side of things. Like I'm sure I could figure it out, but there's so much that like I always like think on it where I'm like, oh, maybe I could like write some music, or if I could figure out, there's so much tech and there's not enough time in the day for me to sit down and figure out like how would I use these programs, having to learn them, which ones should I use, all of these things. But there is something at the back of my mind that's like, maybe I could figure that out. I don't know. But no, the input I have, I mean, I'm sure I would give feedback, but if I'm not directing, I try not to,
Yeah.
bear too much on it.
Got it. Josephine, thank you so much for taking the time. I wish you a wonderful rest of the week, evening, and please enjoy the rest of your week, I guess, your weekend.
Thank you for having me. It's so pleasant chatting with you.
Thanks for listening to The Why with James Hsu. To support the show, please leave a rating on your favorite podcasting app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any platform really. It helps spread the word and tell others that you enjoy my work. Same goes for YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and leave a comment. That helps get the word out and goes a long way. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.